And we're live. Thank you for tuning in to a brand new episode of Robert Conway Live with my guest Samuel Roberts. Today is a special episode. We're getting a little political today. We're going to be talking about the recent Syria attacks, or action in Syria, if you want to be more specific. What that means for Trump supporters, not Trump supporters, and ultimately the rest of the country. And we'll be asking questions. Should we be concerned? Should we support it? Should we not support it? And then we'll be talking about a little incident happening in SoCal where a high school decides to remove all the mirrors in the girls' restroom and replacing them with images of affirmation. Let's take it away. We'll start with this Syria matter, as that kind of happened last night.
So how long was the time span between the reported chemical weapons attack and our retaliation?
You know, that is a good question. I know I heard about the chemical attack earlier in the day. And I noticed we didn't retaliate until later on that night.
Still, that was a remarkably quick turnaround, wasn't it? It was at most 48 hours, I think.
Yeah. It is relatively short, you know, the fact that that was mobilized so quickly. Let's see. And I am kind of fact-checking some of the stuff that's going on right now.
There is a lot of conflicting information going around out there. I've seen stuff saying that the missile attacks we launched did no damage. I've seen stuff saying they totaled the air base and it's non-functional. I've seen all kinds of stuff, and it's very, very hard to know what to believe, which is kind of a recurring pattern with this whole thing, and it's something I think everybody needs to keep in mind when they're forming their opinions on it. There is so much information going around. This claims that the videos showing the chemical weapons attacks were fabricated, that you can see people getting up and smiling after they've been supposedly killed by sarin gas. There's all sorts of stuff going around, and it's very, very hard for us, just sitting in our bedrooms or offices all around the U.S., to know what's actually true. And so we have to make sure that when we make these definitive prediction or definitive statements, oh, it was a false flag, whatever, that we don't have the full story.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really something that speaks to the volumes of it, because we are seeing a lot of Trump supporters that both you and I know and follow, kind of, take it hard. And I don't blame them. One of the campaign promises was to stay out of Syria, sort of let them choose their own path and whatnot. And I understand, especially for the libertarian wing of the Republican Party, that's something that is, it's not necessarily going to fly. With the Warhawk wing, that's a bit of a different story. John McCain seems quite smitten with everything that's going on,
which I think is probably the thing that disturbs me most about this. All the people I hate, all the people I consider conservatives, all the people I consider weak, all the people I consider bloodthirsty and willing to send Americans to die for no real good reason. John McCain, Bill Kristol, a lot of the crew at Pajamas Media, the not Instapundit himself, but Stephen Green, Austin Bay, that kind of crowd are crowing about how awesome Trump is for his decisive strike here. And I have to say, out of everything I've seen, that's what disturbs me the most.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. And it seems like we're going to definitely be seeing a lot of the Never Trumpers. They're going to be quite happy with that.
And of course, it's obvious, but it should still be said. This has not made them support Trump. They are happy about this thing, but they are not Trump supporters. There was a
poll of course
on Drudge, which I am not convinced was not fabricated or manipulated, but we'll just take the data at face value. Did you see this poll? It was simple. Good, bad, don't know. What do you think about the strikes in Syria? Did you see that?
I've seen several of those. Was that the one with over 8,000 or 9,000 responses?
Yes, it was over 9,000. Thank you. Moving on. I'm not sure how many responses there were, but what was important was the breakdown of the responses. Was 64% in favor, 20% or so against, and the remainder saying, I don't know, which is remarkably high, which for the in favor, which again makes me believe that it was manipulated. But that, if we take it at face value, that 20% seems to be mostly the hardcore Trump supporters.
Right.
Paul Joseph Watson, obviously,
Oh
and
yeah.
Cernovich, for instance. Mike Cernovich hasn't gone to the point of backing out of his support for Trump, but he seems pretty upset by it. I know my own crowd at the Rouge V Forum, they are very, very upset by this. A lot of people are jumping off the Trump train, as they say.
Oh yeah.
So I think that this could be the beginning. Depending on how it happens, this could be the beginning of the end for Trump. Because if he loses those hardcore supporters, he has no one left.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It does seem very deliberate that this stuff is going down. And with that being said, it brings up those issues. And it is one of those things, because I would definitely like to see, unity amongst, the Republican and the Republican Party and the greater right, as far as,
But I think it's important that there be loud voices pushing back against military action.
Oh, of course.
I think that it's, as much as I think it's important to support Trump, I think it's more important that there be these very loud people just clamoring against what Trump's doing here. I also think the matter is I think this on its own is kind of an irrelevancy, ironically enough, for all the attention it's getting. In 6 months, the two camps are going to be saying one of two things. The Paul Joseph Watsons, we'll just call them Paul Joseph Watsons, and the Bill Mitchell camp. You're familiar with Bill Mitchell, I'm sure.
At the very least, I am familiar with Paul Joseph Watson.
Bill Mitchell is basically Trump's biggest cheerleader.
Okay.
He was the guy who came up with all of the idea that the polls that were weighted, or were saying Trump was going to lose, were actually weighted in favor of the Democrats. He was fairly important back during the election. But he is essentially in the Trump cheerleader, Trump can do no wrong camp. So it's going to go one of two ways. 6 months from now, if there's no additional action, the Paul Joseph Watsons will have moved on to something else. They'll say, man, that Syria thing was stupid. I don't know what Trump was thinking then, but at least we're done with it. Or we'll be embroiled in a war in Syria, and everybody will have abandoned Trump, and he'll be screwed. It's going to be one of those things.
Well, I definitely think you're right on that, because I mean it is a little nerve-wracking. And I was also looking too. I was seeing some people that were saying, "Let's just sleep on this. Let's see what's going on."
Yeah. Because again, Trump knows things we don't. So you kind of have to think what's going on here. It's possible that he's being given very bad intelligence by the deep state, if you just want to use that term. And so he's not aware that it's a false flag. It's also possible that he has evidence we don't that conclusively proves that Assad is behind it. Now, the major argument I've seen in favor of it being a false flag is that it would be absolutely stupid for Assad to launch a chemical weapons attack right now. Would you say that that's been the primary reason people are giving to say it's a false flag, that it's not in Assad's advantage at all to launch a chemical weapons attack against some random-ass town and, as a result, lose U.S. support 2 days after he gained it?
Yeah, I definitely think that there is something a little off about that. I mean,
well, just in terms of, would you say that's the biggest argument you've seen? That's being said most?
Most. Absolutely most.
There are a couple other reasons being given that usually have to do with things like, oh, John Kerry said there were no chemical weapons in Syria back in 2013, which, if anything, makes me think there probably are chemical weapons in Syria. Or supposed inconsistencies in the videos that have been uploaded, things of that nature. But the primary one seems to, again, be that it doesn't benefit Assad to do this, that it would be stupid for Assad to do this. I don't find that convincing, just because history is rife with examples of people doing really, really stupid shit.
Yeah. And you're definitely right. I am kind of curious. Has anybody heard any kind of statements from Assad himself?
I believe I know Russia is calling for an investigation, hoping, I assume, to prove that it was Turkey, maybe Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It was other forces behind it besides Assad himself. So it's hard to say. And again, that's really, the fog of war is very, very dense here. And it's something that has to be kept in mind. That said, I think if you remove all of what we don't know from the equation and stick simply to the facts that we do know, there's still value in asking the question, okay, Trump responded to a chemical weapons attack by Assad, but with an airstrike on a Syrian airbase. Do you support that? Do you feel that we should be getting involved in the Middle East in reaction to a chemical weapons attack? I think that's a question a lot of people need to ask themselves, because it's a very clarifying question.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And honestly, I think it's supposed to be a job for the UN. And we can definitely get into whether or not the UN's even effective at something like that. And obviously a chemical weapons attack is something that's very serious and something that should be taken very seriously, even if used against their own people, because you don't know, one, where is the sarin gas coming from and where is it going?
That's a very good point. But I know for my part, just having considered it, I don't feel, even if the facts are as Trump says they are, that Assad did launch this chemical weapons attack. I simply don't care. I do not feel that the U.S. should be involved.
Right. And that's definitely a good point too. Whenever you talk about meddling in the Middle East, it is always a very mixed bag.
I can't think of a single time when it's worked.
Right. We could talk about maybe the Barbary pirates resisting them, but that's like way back when with Jefferson. The founding of the Marines, blah, blah, blah. Read your history, kids. But with that being said, that
wasn't the Middle East, though. That was Northern Africa.
It was, but I would say it does kind of blend in. The shores of Tripoli. We are still dealing with a largely Islamic part of the world.
Okay, fair enough.
And like I said, with that being said, things did get more complicated in the 20th century. The Middle East, between being sort of, and what's the word I'm looking for, resettled after the First World War, and even more shifted after World War II, and even going into the Cold War, where the Middle East kind of sort of became a battleground in the Cold War. They've been caught between us and the Russians for a long time. So it is kind of weird to see, how in relationship with Russia we are on this as well. I think that is key.
I would very much like to be friends with Russia.
Me too.
I'm just done with all of the meddling, all of the fighting. It gets us nowhere.
Right.
That said, I am still willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt here, just because I think he's earned it.
Absolutely.
I am opposed to this, but I am not going to drop my support of Trump for it.
Mm-hmm.
I am just going to sigh and shrug it off and move on with life, I think.
Right. Now, another little thing I've noticed is most of the people that were supporting the attacks, I've generally noticed that they tend to be parents.
I had not noticed that.
You know, and rightfully so. If you're a parent and you're seeing video footage of kids getting gassed, you know, I think, of course, you're going to react a certain way. That's just a given. You know, I've got a friend who is a single father. You know, he seemed to be fine with the attacks, and yeah, it made sense. You know, I talked to my parents about the attacks, and you know, my dad was happy that we attacked Syria. You know, that sort of thing.
But at least someone is.
Yeah.
At least someone is. It's hard because on our little corner of the internet, it's so incredibly unpopular that it was hard to imagine that anybody outside of fucking Bill Kristol could support it.
Yeah. It's that sort of thing. And with that being said, you know, going back, it's more of your tradcons, whether or not they supported Trump from the beginning, you will find out that they're the ones that are more likely to be okay with the attacks. And that's, like I said, that just goes with the nature of what's going on and just their general nature. You know, you got to remember that our corner of the internet is very different. You know, we've got, you can jokingly call it the anime wing of the conservative movement, and you know, the Kekistanis.
Are they like anime cons or something like that?
Anime cons.
I don't know. You'd think they'd be a name. You'd think they'd be a name.
I'm just being polite. I'm giving a polite name for anime Nazi, but
yeah, no, that's right. They're the anime Nazi. That is what they call them.
Yeah, and a large portion of Pole, of course.
Good old Pole.
Good old Pole.
No, back in the mid-2000s, it was very, very popular to come up with all these different species of conservatives. There was the crunchy cons, the South Park conservatives, all kinds of mini things. Not uncoincidentally, that was also the time when we started losing a bunch of elections.
Oh, yes. Well, so, you know, the generation raised on 4chan grew up, and they became voters. For better or for worse, you know, hopefully for better. I think it just kind of injects new life into the right, something that desperately needs to be done, and that's kind of what we saw here. And in a way, it, you know, if you go back to even the Tea Party, you know, how the Tea Party, if you look at it, it was supposed to be an alliance between your tradcons and your libertarian Republicans in a way. And, you know, it wasn't a complete success because, let's face it, it was mostly just old people standing out and protesting it. It wasn't this renewed thing. They weren't, you know, they weren't bringing in a younger crowd, which is something that we kind of had over that. Generally speaking, whether or not you identify as any one of the number of varieties that just kind of formed in recent years. And with that being said, I wanted to circle back to what you were saying about maybe, you know, Trump losing support. There are very few celebrities, and I'll use celebrity as a loose term in this case, that have opinions that I would respect. One that comes to mind is actually Ice-T. And I bring this up because Ice-T has said a lot of very red pill things over the last couple of years. Though he wasn't a Trump supporter, I think he at least kind of understands where we're coming from in an extent. He actually predicted recently that, you know, in a couple months that Trump would lose a lot of supporters. And I think this is maybe the first time we're kind of seeing that.
I think that's quite possible. Yeah, I've thought for a while that there's going to be some disappointment that he's been built up to people calling him the God Emperor, which is it's goofy and it's fun, but when you start taking that literally, you're bound to be disappointed.
Oh, of course. And generally speaking, I actually feel that a lot of people from our corner of the internet are pretty realistic. That has actually become more of a joke than anything serious. Roosh refers to him as that in a lot of his videos, and we see that from Milo for obvious reasons, and etc. And I really started thinking about that too, is that one of the other side effects of this whole thing, and one of the side effects of people disagreeing with Trump on this, is the fact that we have this sort of what's the word I'm looking for? There isn't really a cult going on because of this disagreement. It, in many ways, the sort of in a way, the altruistic action, or the willingness to disagree with Trump, kind of disproves a lot of the stereotypes of the Trump voter, which in a way is good. It actually shows that we are the free thinkers, which is wonderful. It's great news. And as I suspected, the real cult leaders are actually the Bernie Sanders supporters.
All right. So we're ready to move on to our next topic then?
Yeah, this one's the fun topic. And it's fun because it involves a place that was near to where I grew up with. In an alternate universe, I would have gone to this high school, Laguna Hills High School in Southern California. I ended up going to Tesoro High School instead. Go Titans. We were much better high school, by the way. Just as proof of California really hitting the political correctness BS that we've seen, the Kindness Club decided to remove the mirrors in the girls' bathrooms and replace them with signs of affirmation, like "you are beautiful" and whatnot, in order to sort of raise their spirits. And this got taken a step further. There was a parent of a Girl Scout troop that was using the girls' restroom, saw these signs, and decided to take a picture, shared them with a group called, get this, Pantsuit Nation.
Pantsuit Nation, huh?
Yes, and that's when it got viral. Now, I did some quick research. Pantsuit Nation was a pro-Hillary Clinton group. And their whole thing was on election day, they were going to get women to wear pantsuits to the voting booth. Just as an antecedent here. And, just the whole thing's kind of bizarre. Is it really gotten to that point where we're worried about injuring children's egos that we had to remove the mirrors? I mean, the mirrors kind of serve a purpose in the restroom, And then second of all, a kindness club. I mean, I remember hearing about a lot of dumb-sounding clubs when I was in high school, but a kindness club seems to take the case.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple thoughts I have. First off is that anyone who wants to do this, who wants to take out the mirrors, is obviously a miserable, miserable person who feels misery when they look at themselves in the mirror.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of American women, and possibly men too, but mostly women, are just miserable people. There's a little exercise for listeners that you might play next time you're out. When you go out to the grocery store, gas station, whatever you do, just look at the women around you and ask yourself, does this woman look happy? Does this woman look like someone who I could hypothetically be interested in marrying? It doesn't matter whether you're actually looking for a marriage partner. You might already be married. You might be MGTOW, whatever. Just ask yourself, could I see myself in another universe, maybe dating this person, marrying this person, and being happy?
That's certainly a good exercise.
It's a very interesting one, because what you'll probably find is the answer is not many. I don't know if it's just where I live, but most women I see out seem to have these awful scowls on their faces. They just look miserable. And it's not just, the massively overweight ones. It's the ones who, the very small portion of women who still look average. That's another thing that I think is just kind of being underappreciated in the United States. There are very, very few average-looking women anymore. There are lots and lots of overweight, not very attractive women. And there are a non-zero number of women who are just in amazing shape, and they spend immense amounts of time in the gym. But an actual kind of average-looking woman is fairly rare.
Oh, yeah, I think you're definitely right on that.
Yeah, I think it's something that you don't notice unless you're looking for it, but once you notice it, you will start seeing it everywhere. So I think this kind of nonsense, taking mirrors out of bathrooms, how do you even do that? I thought they were glued on.
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask the janitors, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose there's no reason to know the answer to that question, is there?
Yeah, there really isn't. I mean,
it's kind of unusual, but it's very, very sad. The people doing it are very sad. The poor people who are trying to make sure their hair looks good, or trying to put their contacts in, or whatever, are very sad. It's just another step in the country falling apart.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, because mirrors do serve a function. They're not just there to, what's the word I'm looking for? Fuel your vanity or someone else's vanity, or they're not there to deliberately make you feel bad about yourself. Personally, I believe that if you're looking at yourself in the mirror every day, of course you're going to notice the imperfections, because that is, that's you. You live with that, If you stay or frequent the same places, you start noticing like what's amiss and, all the little imperfections here. It's just how it is, you kind of have to get over it. But keep in mind, we're dealing with girls, not men. In this case, they're bound to be a little more insecure, but at the same time, they sort of need to learn to get beyond that.
Well, we've had, generations upon generations of women who never felt the need to take the mirrors out of the damn bathroom. This is something new.
Absolutely.
This is something new, and it's a very, very discouraging sign that there are women out there, and again, men too, unfortunately, who are essentially broken to the point of non-functionality.
Yeah.
If you are behaving in that manner, you are essentially non-functional as a human being.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. And it definitely is something new. It's definitely something that's grown out of this fat acceptance culture, something that's come about recently, and it's very dangerous, and it's something that's people need to really think about here. There's nothing wrong with telling yourself affirmations, but removing something that serves a function like a mirror is a whole nother level.
Well, it's just the person who took the mirror out obviously didn't want to spare other people pain. They wanted to spare themselves pain.
Oh yeah. And that does kind of make me think, because obviously they're not going to show what the girl looks like, but the girl who came up with this idea, you got to think that she is probably hideous.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure if you tracked her down, you would not be surprised at all with what.
You know, that sort of thing. And with that being said, I like how you bring up there's probably some men. I'm not aware if they did that to the boys' room or not.
No, male weakness in the U.S. Tends to take kind of a different form.
Yeah.
The ones who are just enormously overweight tend to either just kind of close their eyes to that fact. That's a lie. That was a work thing. I'll just shut this off.
Okay.
Tend to kind of either shut their eyes to that fact or become very self-deprecating about it.
Mm-hmm.
Very much in the look at me, I'm 500 pounds, no one will love me thing that you see on B all the time.
Right.
One of the two. It's not very common for men to say, I'm going to take out the mirror so that I don't have to admit that I'm overweight.
Right. You know, I mean, even then though, yeah, I mean, I'm not perfect. I've got a little pudginess myself, but you know, I like looking in the mirror and thinking about, you know, like that scene out of American Psycho or you know, something like that. Just thinking about that male vanity, just that level of extra confidence is just fine, kind of for the humor's sake, you know.
That's a good point. So I think that's all I have to say on that topic.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all we can really say on the mirror thing. It's just kind of a funny little thing. For anyone that what were you gonna say?
Brick in the building that is America's decline. That was kind of a shitty metaphor, but whatever. I'll come up with a better metaphor for our next podcast.
Of course, we'll probably do something a little less political next time. This was just kind of an airing of the grievances. And thanks to anybody that tunes in or watches the delayed cast or the archived version of this show. Good night, and I hope to see you again.